Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark DeVoe.
And I am Mark Stay, and a huge thank you as always to the people who keep this show going. That's our listeners, not least our patrons over on Patreon and our academates on the Bestseller Academy. And hey, look, if you want to get involved in the Bestseller Academy, doors are opening. Well, they're closing. They're doing something, Mr. D. It's early July, isn't it? Whatever it is, they got right now. Go to academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. Mr. D, what's happening? Tell us.
Yeah, that's right. So we've opened the doors. We've opened the doors for people to apply over the next couple of weeks, and applications for the intake, the July 1st intake, close at the end of June. And we've already had people from all over the world applying. It's so I love this time of year. So exciting to see who's joining us for, starting in the summer months. There's a lot of people who, get an opportunity during the summer to think about writing a book, or maybe a lot of people actually, interestingly, one of the things I've heard a lot about are people who've had the failed New Year's resolutions. You probably know a few of those, Mr. Stays, right? The people on New Year's Eve over a glass of, champagne say, right, this next year is going to be the year that I'm going to finally write that book or finish that book. And it's a really common theme that we hear over and over again. And it struck me the other day that we're almost halfway through this year, and I just I can't believe it. I just felt the other day that summer had arrived, and then I looked at my calendar and thought, we've got a few more days to the longest day of the year, and then it's going to be turning. It catches me every year. So part of the reason why we open the Academy up before the summer is there's a lot of people who, are thinking, well, we're halfway through the year. It's not over yet. A lot of people write the year off and they just say, well, I'll wait till next year. Like, life will not wait for us, as we will find out, in the interview today, incredible stories of how, people's lives can turn around unexpectedly. So I'm going to encourage everyone out there who's been sitting on the fence about maybe this should be their year to really step up. Yeah. And that's what the Academy is there. It's there to support people through that journey. And oh my gosh, the people we have in there. If you imagine the average awesome person that listens to this podcast, and then you put them all in a room together and multiply it by 50? That's how awesome the Academy members are. So I just want to thank everyone who's here doing it. It's been nearly 2 years since it started, and it's just been incredible, the stories that we've heard.
Crikey.
Yeah, exciting stuff. How are you, sir? How are you? There's a lot going on in your world with the books, impending release dates of books.
Yeah, well, yes, I've got a book out in a few weeks. I'm getting ready for that. Funny enough, I've just been speaking to a guy earlier today about live streaming the book launch as well, which wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it, but I'm talking to a guy who thinks he knows how he can do it and do it properly in a way that people can interact and send us questions and all that good fun stuff. So keep an eye out on my socials for that. That should be lots of good fun. What else is happening? So, the German edition of Babes in the Wood. That's the second Woodville book. The German edition, which is called Nachtzauber, Night Magic. That's out this week. That's really exciting.
Wow, that's fun.
Already seeing lots of book bloggers on Instagram saying nice things about it, which is wonderful.
You got Google Translate in on steroids right now, have you?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, actually, Instagram a couple of weeks ago, something happened to Instagram where it took away there's a little C translation button at the bottom of any foreign language thing. They took it away, and I was like, oh blimey! So and it wouldn't allow you to copy the text either. So I had to fire up my laptop, go on Instagram on the desktop and copy and paste it there. But it's back. It's back as of a couple of days ago. So
you know what you need?
You
know what you need, Mark? You need German Siri.
Yeah.
That would be brilliant. That would be absolutely brilliant. Yeah, translation through Silly.
But the cherry on the cake this week is Harry Goldhawk, who does the cover art for the books in the UK, the Simon & Schuster English language editions, just kind of out of the blue. He's working on his portfolio, and he decided just to do a couple of illustrations of the Crowfolk, so the scarecrows in the Crowfolk, and a scene of Faye from the very end of the book, and they are magical. They're just absolutely wonderful. So I've popped them up on my blog and on my socials so that people can see them. And if you want to check out Harry's other stuff, because Harry, we've got his calendar here. We get his calendar every year, and he works with his wife. They do beautiful artwork for that. So I'll pop a link in so you can check out his other work. But yeah, just completely out of the blue, he's like, I'm working on my portfolio. Thought I'd do a couple of illustrations, and it's cool. It's just wonderful, really wonderful.
It's almost grown. I know you'll love this, Mark, but I remember admiring artwork of Star Wars over the years, and there's all kinds of incredible fan artwork and official artwork, but it creates a whole additional universe to what is the stories of these things, and to actually start to see that happening with your books is pretty exciting stuff, isn't it? It's lovely to get those kind of interpretations, and it's so much more than just a book. When it all starts to kick off, I mean, this is the thing we forget as writers. We're all grinding away at the writing desk, but these types of things, you would never have predicted this, would you? Before you started Woodville, that suddenly an artist would just out the blue create a few images of the world that you've created. That's all kinds of awesome.
It's amazing, and it's I've got stuff I can't talk about, but there will be other art on the way as well. So stand by, beards, folks.
There's a lot of stuff going on in Mr. Stay's world right there, isn't there, listener? There's a lot you can't talk about, that's where you want to.
So much I can't talk about.
That's just for everyone listening. Just for everyone listening, we're here to inspire you on this podcast, and when you hear the words, I can't really talk about it yet, that means some really cool things are happening in your world. That's the kind of place everyone wants to get to. Everyone wants to be in that place where they can't talk about stuff because there's contracts that need to be signed and agreements that need to happen and all kinds of other things. So yeah, I'm very excited to hear more.
I'll drop in some teases,
Easter eggs.
Easter egg teasers of things that I can't talk about this week. But one word is Cannes Film Festival. The other word is says. The other word is composers. That's very exciting. So I'll just drop those two words in there and walk away like a big tease.
Okay, so we should have this like bingo game where every week people collect the words and start to maybe write them down on a piece of paper and then start sending us their suggestions of what the hell they think's going on in your world right now, and then you find out if it's true or completely off the mark. I love it. I think it's brilliant, and it's super exciting. And this is what it's about, folks. It's about making things happen. It's about taking the opportunities when they arise. And we hope everyone out there this week. Okay, goal for everyone. Coach Mark, Mr. D, Coach Mark says to everyone out there right now, write down one big thing that you want to happen in your writing career. And it might not be the classic, I'm going to finish the book this year, or I'm going to find an agent, I'm going to find a publisher. It could be something bonkers like, in 2 years from now, I would like to, have an artist create the front cover of my book. Or actually one really beautiful email we got this week. And actually, Mark, we're getting these more and more, aren't we? We got a lovely email from a listener who said, my goal is to get on the bestseller experiment. I'm not kidding you, I've had about 4 or 5 of those in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I love that authors are thinking like that, because it's important to have some tangible goals. Finishing a book's quite an intangible goal at times, because you sometimes don't quite know how many more words you're going to be writing or how long the edits are going to take, as we'll discover today in our interview. But something like I always say in coaching, when you create a goal, if I ask you in 5 years, have you accomplished it? You have to answer the question yes or no. You can't say, well, kind of. That's why. So if your goal is well, maybe, then you've got to redefine it as if Mark D asks you, have you accomplished it? Now, have you been on the bestseller experiment? Yes or no? There's a yes or no answer to that. Have you finished world building? Well, maybe. Right?
Well, look, folks, if you want to hear some of those tangible goals that have been achieved, hang around to the end of the podcast. We've got a bumper social media section at the end where some of our members of the Academy and our BXP group on Facebook have been doing some really, really amazing things. So hang around for that and get inspired.
We better rock on, Mr. S. If we've got a ton of social media, we better get into this awesome interview that we've got today. So
Tell
us about our wonderful guest today.
Our guest today is Patricia Gibney, who is a crime author from Westmeath in Ireland. She's published by Bookouture, and Bookouture, I mean, we've had plenty of Bookouture authors on here before, but they just seem like one of the best publishers around. They really seem to know their stuff. And it was recently announced that Patricia's Detective Lottie Parker series have sold over 2 million copies, and the latest of those is The Guilty Girl. And Patricia was just such a delight to speak to. And we discuss, amongst many other things, we discuss working with an editor to create ideas, why she's a write everyday kind of author, and how a children's book that she wrote in a very difficult time in her life, how that book changed everything.
Brilliant stuff. Well, let's dive in and listen to Mark chatting with the absolutely lovely Patricia Gibney.
Patricia Gibney, welcome to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you, and thanks for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. And we're here. Bookouture, your wonderful publisher Bookouture, recently announced 2 million sales of your Detective Lottie Parker series. We doff our caps to you. Huge congratulations to you. How does that feel?
It feels amazing. I still can't believe it. To me, these numbers kept going up and going up. And when I actually heard it was 2 million, I was absolutely just astounded. And I'm still kind of trying to visualize like the number in my head. But I'm so grateful to Bookouture and to all my readers for getting me to that milestone.
Well, I think you're just getting warmed up, to be honest, because we've got a new book in your Lottie Parker series, The Guilty Girl, which is book 11 in the series. So many more sales to come. Tell us about The Guilty Girl.
Well, The Guilty Girl came about... I had a brainstorming session with my editor, Lydia Vassar-Smith, and I told her I had this idea about somebody that was being accused of a crime. And it looked, all the evidence was pointing to this person had committed the crime, but Lottie has this gut feeling that there's something else going on. And I was partly inspired by the Amanda Kircher, is it Meredith Kircher and the Amanda Knox case?
Right.
It was just like an idea came from that. And the whole brainstorming with my editor, we were able to flesh it out a bit more. And as I started writing it, then the story is somewhat different from what I had at the beginning. But that was the germ of an idea that got me started.
I love that you're brainstorming with your editor. Is that something you do at the very earliest stage, just to make sure you're both delivering? You're delivering what they're looking for, or is it a two-way process?
It's a two-way process, and it's only really started with, I'd say, the last 2 or 3 books. I think during lockdown, I got to a stage where I felt I couldn't write. I got it very hard to, while other people were getting so really creative in lockdown, my creativity went out the window. And I just found that I couldn't write. I couldn't come up with an idea. And so Lydia rang me one day, and we just went through, what about this? What about that? And we came up with an idea. It was for the last 2 books back, Silent Voices. And once I had that brainstorming session with Lydia, I had the idea to start the book. So we did it then for book 10, Little Bones, and we've just done it now as well before I started The Guilty Girl. So it's working so far. And I think it's good, as you say, we're kind of on the same page from the start. And then when I get to about 30,000 words, I send her what I've written so far, and she would say, this is working, that's not working. And it cuts down then on structural edits, when the draft goes into her. Yeah.
That's an amazing thing, because you think certainly someone who's 11 books into a series, sold 2 million copies, you have every right to sit back and go, nope, I know what I'm doing, leave me to it, let me get on with it. But that's incredibly collaborative. So is this, do you foresee carrying on like this? Is this a great way of working for you? Do you enjoy this?
I enjoy it, yeah. And it probably wouldn't have come about unless we'd had the lockdown, because I was I was on a roll. I was, writing 2 books a year. Everything was going grand. And then just suddenly it was like, I can't do this. I was terrified. So it's worked with these 3 books. So I think it helps in the editing process then as well. that she kind of knows what I'm at, because up to then I was terrified of showing what I was writing to anyone, even to her, like, until no, I can't show you until I'm finished. I can't show you until I'm finished, So I'm kind of a bit more relaxed about it now, and I don't treat it as precious as much, as I used to, and it's easier then to let it go.
Excellent stuff. As we said, you're 11 books into the series with Lottie Parker. How has Lottie changed and evolved over the course of those 11 books?
She's changed quite a lot. When I started writing Lottie first, she was she was at the very beginning of a grieving process for her husband who had died. I think in the first book was like 3.5 years previously. And so she was kind of floundering around, didn't know what she was at, trying to keep her kids on the straight and narrow and try and keep her job. And as the books were going on, she was getting more, she was beginning to understand what was going on in her life. Like, she didn't realize she was in a grieving process, and she was all over the shop, all over the place. So now she's a bit more, what would you say, level-headed, kind of looking for what does she want out of her life. She is still the type of person who gets stuck into a case to the detriment of what's going on at home. And she has developed a good bit. And then she's this on-off relationship with her, as we call, sidekick, Sergeant Boyd in the story as well. So that's an ongoing story. But I think she's a stronger character. She's still a bit of a maverick and does what she wants to do. And to hell with the superintendent, But readers keep contacting me, like, what's going to happen next, and they're loving Lottie. So I think she's developing in the right way.
Excellent. How much does that kind of reader feedback colour what you write next? If people will tell you, I liked this about her, I didn't like that about her, does that sort of play on you as you're writing the next book?
Not anymore. At the beginning, it did. I would be, some readers would be saying, "Oh, that shouldn't have happened," or why would she do that? And I'd be thinking, "Oh my God, like maybe I shouldn't have, put that into the book. Maybe Lottie should have done something." But now I don't. I just take, I take the feedback. If there's something that I think, oh yeah, that really, hits a nerve, I will run with it. But in the main, it's my baby. I have to kind of wean it and help it to grow, So I wouldn't be influenced unless there was something that I really felt worthy of, changing or whatever.
Excellent stuff. I want to go back to a time I read somewhere that a few decades ago, while you still had a day job, you did write a first novel that I don't believe anyone has seen. It didn't go anywhere. Can you tell us how it all started for you?
Well, I suppose I'm one of these people who always wanted to write a book, and like I'm an avid reader from when I was little, and when my father used to read me stories, and then when I could join the library and get my own library card and my own books. So I absolutely love mystery stories, and I always had this idea, well, I'd love to write one of them. And I never really had an opportunity, but I'd say about 25, maybe 30 years ago, I got a PC. It was my first PC. I think I bought it through work, where you could pay every week for it, one of the old style PCs, and decided I was going to write this book. And the kids were small, and I was, every hour I could get, I was on the laptop. They probably don't remember now because they were little ones, but I wrote this book anyhow. I used to take my annual leave from work, and rather than go on a holiday, I'd sit and I'd write. I have no idea how long it took me or, anything, but I printed it out. So it was like, that height of double spaced. And I read back and I said, well, I'll do something with that someday. But then, the kids were getting older, and I don't even know where it is now, and it's probably stuck on the hard drive of my PC in a landfill somewhere at this stage. Right now, I think back that maybe that is the book that I had to get out of my system, right. And I just probably just so bad that it would have just finished my writing career.
What were the most important lessons that you learned from writing that book?
Oh God, the time it was taken. Planning it out. I set it in a city where I wasn't familiar with, which with my Lottie Parker books now, they're all located in the town of Ragmullen, which is loosely based on where I live. So I happen to be going and looking up maps and all of that type of thing. But really, it was the commitment to it that I felt, by writing that book, I really had to give up so much of my time to write it. And back then, I wouldn't have had the motivation to keep going with it that I would have now.
Excellent stuff. And can you tell us about Spring Sprung Sally?
Spring Sprung Sally, I do a bit of art. I don't do much of it now, but I used to do, a bit of drawing and painting. But after my husband died back in 2009, I went through a particularly bad time in my life and I had to give up my day job. And how I came out of that was by doing these morning pages. It's from the book The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron's book. Mm-hmm. And in that, it was all about, using your creativity, making time for yourself, writing your morning pages. And I started to do a little bit of drawing, a little bit of writing. And my first foray was to do a little children's book. So I did the drawings for Spring Sprung Sally and I wrote a little story, and it'd be like for a preschool age group, maybe 3-4-year-old. And I decided I was going to self-publish it in my bit of madness that I was going through at the time. And I couldn't do the business side of it. I floundered with that. I couldn't, do the invoicing or the following up, or, it was just all... It was all going above my head. Mm. And I think it was because I worked for all my life in administration and I could not do the administration side of the self-publishing. And I think to me, it's like a bit of PTSD after Aidan had died, that side of my brain it just didn't work anymore. Even to this day, I just find it so hard to do paperwork. So then that was the end of Spring Sprung Sally. The kiddies loved it, and people had often asked me, is there going to be another Spring Sprung Sally? And I would say, no.
But as you say, you had this terrible tragedy in your life. And as you say, you sort of almost shut off that admin, that side of your brain, but you embraced this creative side. And as you say, you work with books like The Artist's Way. If you're okay talking about it, I know it's a really, really horrible time. Your husband died in 2009. You left your job, and you took, I think, 5 years to write that first novel. Mm-hmm. That must have been. I can't even begin to imagine what you were going through, but that can't have been easy. What kept you going?
Well, what I found was writing the morning pages, I suppose as you call nowadays, is journaling. Mm-hmm. And you have to write these 3 pages every morning, and it's like there's a stream of consciousness onto the page.
Right.
And like I was going through this grieving process, but didn't know what I was going through, a bit like my character. So I was getting all these emotions down on the page, and the anger and the annoyance, and roaring at the whole world, like why me and why Aidan, and all of the things that would go through your head. And I found then that it was really therapeutic. I was able to get up out of the bed then and do my days, with the kids and whatever they were doing, and cook a dinner. Just to be able to do the little basic things in life had been beyond me for about 12 months. And through journaling, I was able to give myself a bit of focus. And as I was writing that, and I did my Spring Sprung Sally, I said, well, maybe now is my time to try and write a novel. And I still believe if I hadn't been writing the morning pages, there never would have been a Lottie Parker. Because when I started writing the novel then, I was able to pour a lot of the emotion that I was going through into her character. And she, I suppose she grew out of what I was going through emotionally, like this feeling of, I don't know what's going on around me, and just kind of trying to put one foot in front of the other, trying to do her job, trying to keep her kids fed and, whatever. So I found that really, really therapeutic. And as I was writing it, I didn't know what I was doing. Even though I'd written this other book about 25 years ago, I didn't know, is this right? Is this wrong? I could read crime novels. That's why I kind of was a crime novel I was going to write, because that's what I read mainly.
Yeah.
And, but I didn't know how to structure it. I have no idea. I think that was partly why it took me 5 years to write it. But I decided then I'd become a little bit of a hermit. I just didn't like going out. But I just decided I would do some writing courses. Most of the writing courses were in Dublin. So I had to get in my car. I had to drive to Dublin. And you meet so many people who they're doing the same thing as you. And then you begin to realize, well, maybe I'm not crackers after all. They're like-minded people. They understand what I'm trying to do, And that was really good. So that was kind of learning the craft of, how to structure a book, to develop your characters, your plot, that type of thing. So when I finished it, well, I thought I was finished, I decided I'd get a manuscript appraisal. So I sent it off and I got back, I don't know how many pages, it was pages and pages of this appraisal. And it was eye-opening. Right. I think I cried when I got it. But then I realized, like it needs more work. So it took about another year to kind of whip it into shape. And because of my experience with the self-publishing, and I am a huge admirer of anybody who can self-publish and get their book out there, and because I know the amount of work that goes in, behind the scenes on it. Writing the book is just one part of it. And I just know that I'm not able to do the other part of it. So with the novel, then I decided, well, I'm going to get an agent and I'm going to get someone to publish it for me, because I can't do this myself. Having no idea like how to even go about getting an agent. But I did. I was the first agent I sent it to sign me up. So that was. Yeah.
Whoa. Actually, Patricia, if you listen, you can hear all of our listeners who haven't got an agent yet grinding their teeth. That was incredible. How did you select your agent? Was that a careful process?
She was recommended to me by one of the tutors on one of the writing courses. So at least I had a name to start with. So I was the agent was Ger Nichol of the Book Bureau. And she contacted me after about 2 weeks to say she was sorry she was taking so long and that she loved the book. And I was saying, is it my book? It's only been 2 weeks. I've been told like it could be 6 months before you hear back.
Yeah.
And so that was in November, and in January I signed with her. January 2016.
Wow.
Sending out the book process starts. The rejection letters that is part and parcel of the whole thing.
Do you recall how many rejections you got?
I'd say I got 7 or 8 before Book Couture contacted us. It was at the time like, what I call positive rejections. Right. It was like the writing is good, but it's not for us. So I was kind of, consoling myself, saying, well, they're not saying I'm a bad writer, Yeah. So when Book Couture contacted us, basically they want to know had I anything else. And in my madness, I was actually writing book 2 because I felt the Lottie Parker character was strong enough to withstand 2 books.
Right.
So that's what I thought at the beginning, anyhow. And so I sent them the synopsis of the second book, and they came back and they wanted me to sign a contract for 4. And so that was 4. So I had 1 and a bit written, and then 4. So I was basically going to be writing 2 books a year. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd be able to manage that. Like, forgetting that it was after taking me 5 years to write the first one, And we signed with Book Couture, who are a digital publisher. And that's when I realized the editing process and the amount of time it takes. And I just couldn't understand, like, that you have your structural edits, your line edits, your copy edits, your proofreading. And because it was digital and they do print on demand as well, so there was 2 versions to be proofed. I just couldn't believe it. I said, how am I going to write 2 books a year and edit 2 books as well? But I did it. So I think the fact that I didn't know anything about it was a good thing.
Yes.
In the beginning, if somebody came to me now and said, I want to sign you for 4 books and it's 2 books a year, I'd be saying, well, wait now, hold on a minute. That's a little bit too much, So yeah, it was good. And it kept, the series fresh. The fact that I was writing books so close together, and there's a short timeline in between the books, kept characters fresh in my mind. And even during lockdown, I signed another contract and I got it changed to 1 book a year, because I just found it so hard to write. And kind of book 11 is coming out and I'm already writing book 12.
Yeah.
Whereas 2 years ago, I was hardly able to write 1 book, So I think it goes in phases, the outside world can affect your mental health, can affect what you're doing. And sometimes you just have to, sit back and find some new way of doing it.
Absolutely. I see that you're a write every day writer. Was that always the case, or is it something you adopted in order to keep up with, 2 books a year, 1 book a year?
I think it came from writing the morning pages. And right. I can only write in the mornings now. And yeah, I found it kept the book fresh. It kept my characters fresh because I have an awful memory. I forget everything. So if I left the book for a week and went back, I'd have to read everything I wrote because I wouldn't even remember the names of my characters. And it's got worse in the last 2 years. I suppose it's just with everything else is going on. So I just find it benefits me to write every day. And it keeps that muscle in the brain going as well. It just, it suits me. But when I'm editing now, if I'm doing edits, I will just leave it. I might just open the laptop, read a little bit of what I wrote in the other story, but I don't want the 2 stories getting mixed up in my head. I'd have a core set of characters that are in all of the books, but then I'd have this whole raft of new characters. So I just need to kind of park that one side and just do my editing and then go back to my writing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I've also heard that you finish mid-sentence at the end of your writing day in order to pick up from where you started. Is that something you still? I've used that. I still do that. Yeah.
I don't do it all the time now, but I used to do it. It was something I read somewhere that said if you finish, in the middle of a sentence, when you go back in, you only have a little paragraph to read, and you're able to pick it up much quicker. I don't do it as much now. I have more of a rhythm going. And once I can remember what I've written the day before, but I think for somebody starting out with that, I think it is a good advice to try and leave it, something hanging, so that when you go back into it, you're not just faced with the start of a chapter, or, start from scratch again, and you're able to get in and start writing immediately. So I think it's good. It is good advice. Yeah.
I also know that you've done your fair share of acting on stage. Has that helped you as a writer in sort of getting into character and creating characters?
Oh God, it's a long time since I did a bit of acting. I like drama. I was involved with the Arts Centre here in Mullingar, and I actually ran it for 2 years as well. With regards to characters and coming up with characters, I don't know what it is with me, but once I have a character and a situation, the character comes alive for me. Right. I don't know whether it's the same for other writers, but it's like I can visualize this character. I can have a conversation with them. So maybe it does come from the drama about kind of taking on a different persona. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I find once I have this scenario or a scene and as a character has to do something in it, then I'll know what that character is like. I'll know what they're thinking even. I'll know what they have to wear, so it comes nearly fully formed to me. And possibly, maybe the bit of acting subconsciously is helping me there.
Excellent stuff. One thing we have in common, Patricia, is we are both everyday kindness authors. You've got a story in here, Broken Wing. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I used to write short stories, and while I was writing The Missing Ones, my first book, I entered a few short story competitions, and it was only when I actually won one that I felt, it gives you a little bit of a boost to think that you can, you're able to write, let's say. But when I agreed to do a story for Everyday Kindness with Louise Ross, I found it so hard to write, from writing like 115,000 word novel to write something that's down like under 3,000 words. I can't remember, was it 3,000 or 1,500 words, whatever it was. Oh my God. I said, how can I write a short story? So it was really, really difficult. Because it was something that I hadn't been doing like for maybe the last 5 or 6 years. I hadn't written a short story. So it took quite a bit of editing and, chopping stuff out of it to get the story to work. But it was based on an incident from my childhood. So I had, the characters of the grandmother, and which would have been my grandmother, and of the child. There's a lot of fiction woven in around it as well. But I found it so difficult to actually, get the words to compact what I wanted to write into a short story. It's a different kind of a skill set, I think.
Yeah, no, I had exactly the same problem. There's a huge difference between waffling on for 80,000 words and then trying to cram it all into 5,000. Every single word counts. So yeah, it was really, really hard. But a wonderful book, folks, and we'll put a link in the show notes if you want to discover more about that. Patricia, what's coming next for you? Are we going to be seeing more Lottie Parker adventures?
I have 3 more to write, and so there will be at least 3 more after The Guilty Girl, and possibly more after that. We'll see how long I can keep Lottie fresh and relevant, and as long as the readers and my publisher still want her. I have loads of ideas, like that bit of stagnation that came with the start of lockdown is kind of, it's slowly, because now we're kind of out of it, and I know there's another COVID wave at the moment, but it's kind of like something is kind of relieved, or a lever has been relieved on my brain, and I have more ideas. Like I kind of have ideas for the next 2 or 3 anyhow, whereas for a while there I just thought, how am I ever going to put a word onto a laptop again,
Yeah. I had a very, very similar feeling at the beginning of lockdown myself, and it was short stories that got me out of that hole. But it's I don't think you're alone there. But it's great to see that you're having such a terrific success with the Lottie Parker books, and here's to many, many more. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us, which I think a lot of people will find inspirational. So thank you so much for speaking to us, Patricia, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Thanks a million, Mark. It was very enjoyable and lovely to speak with you.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Do you know what, Mark? The more I hear interviews like this, the more I think we all should be writing detective series. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's funny you should say that. We had craft coaching on the Academy on Monday, and someone asked, what is it about, what let's talk about bestsellers. What are bestsellers? And I did some deep dives into research that people have done, and actually crime thrillers make up about half of the genres that are bestsellers. People do love a crime thriller. So, but the flip side of that is it's incredibly competitive it's very overcrowded. So to do what Patricia's done and stand out, be outstanding in that crowd is extraordinary.
But people that listen to the Bestseller Experiment have got an unfair advantage over everyone else, right? So, I mean, you keep looking at, it's about to get through that kind of crowded space. It's about having that extra 1-2% of knowledge, of understanding, and listening to those authors that have done it. And Patricia has done it in spades. It's absolutely incredible, isn't it? To think, I mean, the book I'm writing right now, I was thinking, God, I wonder if there's a way I could actually twist the main character into a potential detective. I was that convinced by it. I was thinking, because a lot of the times people are writing protagonists who are solving mysteries. It's just they're not officially a detective. So I don't know if you see, I'm trying to work out, is it that you have to have a detective in your books for it to kind of like, because then you've got the series and you know, all the TV shows have always got this detective and Poirot runs through everything. Or can you get away with it if you've got a kind of pseudo detective who's not actually detective by name, but is basically trying to do the same thing, but maybe, you know, not legally underneath in the underworld, possibly. I don't know what your take is on that.
I think people like a mystery, and you know, all stories I think are a mystery at their heart. They reveal themselves to the reader over time. I mean, you know, mine aren't detective books, but certainly the second book and the third book, there's a kind of a whodunit element to them. So, you know, I think, but the thing is, just having a detective isn't enough. You know, a character can't exist in isolation. It's all very well having a detective, but you have to throw something at them to bring them alive. You have to come up with situations to test them. And every detective, you know, there are lots of stereotypes and cliches in detective novels. You know, they've got a drink problem, or they're divorced, or they're, you know, there's usually some backstory that makes them dark and brooding or whatever. But the fact is, you know, if they're well written, if the author comes at them, as Patricia has, with a unique point of view and an honesty and a truthfulness to it, they will be different. They will stand alone. And then readers will go, I really like that character and I want to come back for more. I mean, I think if you recall, as Ian Rankin told us, Sir Ian Rankin as he is now, in the episode that he did with, and I think Mark Billingham said this similar thing as well, which is people don't remember the plots. They don't remember the mysteries. Those are the things that you know, might keep you turning the page, but they remember the character. Mm-hmm. They remember, they love Rebus and they want to come back for more, you know, or they you know, they love Detective Lottie Parker and want to, you know, discover what she's, you know, dealing with this time. So you know, it's all very well saying, yeah, I'll have a detective, but it's like any character, you know, you've got to put them in a situation that brings them to life and tests them and makes them vivid and memorable for the reader, which is easier said than done, of course.
Well, absolutely. But it is fascinating. And I do think to some extent, because of the success of detective series on TV, I mean, you think through the ages, I mean, you go back like Kojak and I mean, there's so many of them. You just kind of wonder how much of people's childhoods have been shaped by those type of TV shows. And that's why we kind of naturally led into loving these types of stories in book form over the years as well.
I also think there's a lot to be said. I mean, we mentioned Agatha Christie a lot on this podcast, especially recently. You know,
yeah, she's been a big topic, hasn't she?
She really has.
We should get her on the show one day.
Yeah, I wonder if she's available. Just reminds me, about 10 years after Robert Ludlum died, we used to get requests for events with him.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, Agatha Christie, I think, is arguably one of the, you know, the most popular and compelling authors of the 20th century. And I think she looms large over a lot of what people write, and, you know, has been a massive influence on, certainly on a lot of the guests that we've had on the show. So I think, you know, there's something about that genre, like I say, the mystery, the reveal, and the way that she writes and gave so many writers a template and said, you know, beat that if you can. I think that's it's satisfying as well. You know, if you have a mystery with a murder and someone gets arrested and goes to jail, and the detective, you know, that's that done. On to the next one. It's a great way to end a story, and I think there's huge satisfaction for the reader in that. And again, that's something that brings the readers coming back for more. Is, you know, they're great. I got a beginning, a middle, and a really satisfying end where the bad guy went to jail. I'll have more of that, please. And we live in a world where the bad guys don't necessarily go to jail. You know, we live in a world where, you know, there aren't many satisfying endings. It's interesting. You know, we love Michael Connelly on this show, and his novels are wonderful. One of the books I read of his is a collection of his journalistic writings when he worked for, was it the LA Times? He worked for the LA Times, and he wrote about true crime. And it's really, really compelling writing, but it's also quite dispiriting because very often the murders are unsolved.
That's right.
The killer doesn't get caught, or the bodies are never found, and it's horrible, and it's kind of bleak. Whereas if you read Michael's fiction, the bodies are found, the bad guys go to jail. It's that's what we look for. We've talked about how fiction helps us make sense of the world, and I think that's what crime and thrillers does really, really well.
Isn't it interesting that in the real world, this idea of unsolved scenarios has actually created a whole new genre of TV programs around unsolved mysteries? I mean, it's fascinating that in the real world that's actually happened.
But they only do the crimes where someone goes to jail. They only do the mysteries where there's, sometimes you get, like, there's the mystery of D.B. Cooper, who's the guy with the sunglasses who hijacked a plane and jumped out of the plane, parachuted out and was never found. And there's a kind of mystery to that, in that did he die? Did he go to Brazil? What happened to him? There's all kinds of wonderful theories, and that's kind of like the Jack the Ripper thing as well. No one will ever know, and there's an eternal mystery in that, which is appealing. But a lot of those documentaries that crop up on Netflix, they only work because someone was caught and went to jail and confessed, or there was some clue or whatever. They follow a very similar fiction, narrative structure, which I think is why they're very satisfying. And again, there's this huge boom in a true crime podcast as well. I mean, there's a true crime podcast which has become a TV show on Disney, Only Murders in the Building, which is brilliant, by the way, and there's a second series coming. So it's that's what we should have done, was a true crime podcast.
I was going to say, Mark, do you reckon Disney would be interested in the Bestseller Experiment podcast, where two blokes sit around chatting about books all day?
Yeah, could run and run and run, couldn't it?
For years, actually, couldn't it? Yeah. So, if you're listening, Disney, we are available to offers, and as long as there's hobnobs involved, we might listen. Do you know, the other thing I think is really interesting is that with books like Patricia, with books like Agatha Christie, I think one of the things that's really appealing is it's a lens into the world of scary stuff. But with Agatha Christie, for example, it's never too much about the grotesque description of the murder. The murder happens and it's like, oh, that's awful. But it's never, so it has a much broader base. Like, there's people that love to read gruesome and horror books and where you really kind of go into, I mean, Stephen King's a great example. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, and you do films about it as well, Mark. But I think when you take when you take the entire reading population, there's a lot of people that just don't like to go there on some, but that's why I think a lot of, but they do like to also cross that line and dip their toe into a murder and then run away and go, ooh, that's awful, but it's not, and I wonder if that's why they're so popular.
Yeah, again, it's safe. That it feels safe, doesn't it? I used to.
It's a safe murder.
Yeah, exactly. It's on the page. It's not going to jump out and grab your throat. But I do remember when I was a bookseller, you'd get people, especially at Christmas, going, "I'd like something that's got a lovely juicy murder for my gran, but no sex." Murder, killing another human being, fine. But the beautiful act of love, they can't have that. They can't have any hanky-panky.
Meanwhile, Gran in Jan is sitting there reading a book going, where's all the sex? Where's all this bloody murder? Where's all the sex? Right? We know what Grans are like. The Grans that show up when you're playing a family game of Cards Against Humanity and then end up explaining the whole thing to you, right? Kind of Grans.
Been there, done that.
Right?
Yep.
Those kind of Grans. Yep. Brilliant. Love it. Oh my gosh. Absolute stuff. Well, the other thing that I loved about what Patricia said is her experience of when she was going through learning. I mean, we're always learning the craft, but when she was really made that conscious decision, right, I really want to, learn about how to create stories. I want to go into the depth about this. I want to study it. That she talked about meeting these like-minded people. And we've talked about this again and again on the Academy. It's like the like-minded people that make you realize you're not crazy. There are the people that wander around thinking about their plot all day long. We can't stress this enough about finding your tribe of authors, of like-minded authors.
Yeah, very much so. And one of the things since lockdown ended here, the thing I'm doing more and more often is just booking, chats with other writers, going for a coffee, meeting people, just making that connection. And it's I always learn something. I always, you're making a new friend, you're making a new colleague, you're meeting your peers. It really is important, because it's such a lonely profession, and you're constantly wondering, am I doing this right? Am I allowed to do this? Is a person like me allowed to be published? And just having someone else, say absolutely, and you're not alone. You're not alone. You can always ask for help. No one wants you to fail, and no one expects you to know everything. On a slightly different tack, I belong to a few Facebook groups for filmmakers, and there was a new filmmaker saying their director of photography had mentioned some piece of kit, and this person didn't know what it was, and they were like, "Oh, has anyone got a good reference book? Because I need to look this up so I don't look like a complete idiot." And what's heartwarming is the replies were going, just tell them. No one expects you to know everything, particularly on the technical side of things. Just ask and help will come. People aren't, there are obviously there are dickheads in the world who might mock you. But by and large, I find, particularly within artistic communities, we've all been there.
Yeah.
We don't, should I send a manuscript in with double line spacing? How big does the font have to be? Are there fonts that I can't use? Basic questions that you kind of think, I'm too scared to ask that. I think it's one of the reasons, again, slightly different tack. My wife's gardening YouTube channel, she always assumes no knowledge whatsoever. So even when it's something as simple as planting seeds, she'll always show you how it's done. She won't assume you know it. She go, going up to the knuckle there and blah, blah, blah. She always makes it very simple and assumes no knowledge whatsoever. So it's never be afraid to ask, because help will be there.
Well, the best-selling reference books in the world, what are they? The Dummy's Guide and the Idiot's Guide. They knew that's what we all, we prefer to be able to approach it where somebody treats you as you don't. Some people are very advanced in certain areas of their writing. They might be very advanced in craft, for example. I mean, it's again another thing we see in the academy. People who've got, incredible knowledge of craft, others who've got very little knowledge of craft. They're starting their journey. And we always say there are no such thing as dumb questions. And the best thing I love about this is that when we do Q&As and coaching, people ask a dumb question in their words. Oh, it's a dumb question. Well, it's never is a dumb question. But the people who are advanced in that subject often really appreciate it, because we also all need reminders. It's one thing about learning something. And again, this is why coaching industry exists, because we can learn something. That's great. We now have knowledge, but it's not of any value until we put it into action, until we repeat it several times, that it becomes baked into our way of being. And I've been reading personal development books now for goodness knows what, 34 years, Mark. I can't even believe I said that. But I still pick up some of those very same books that I first read in my teens, because I just need to be reminded. I need to be reminded, even as a coach. I mean, that's why I coach, is because it also reminds me all the stuff I'm telling everyone else. So yeah, Mark, maybe you should be doing that yourself, right? It's a really important part of it.
Yeah, well, if you think back to last week's episode with Joanne Harris, there was something she said that reminded me of some. Again, we can't know everything at all times. This is something where every book we write, every story we write is different. There are different challenges every time, and there are different solutions. Talking about self-help books, and one that Patricia mentioned, I bet this is on your bookshelves. The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah. The whole idea of morning pages, is a great concept, this idea of stream of consciousness. And people can use that concept even before they start writing. It's like, just write. Often it's just about writing the crap out in some ways. I mean, that's not what morning pages is, but if you want to hit your stride when you're writing your book, sometimes just allowing that first page to be something you just write and throw away, or if it turns out to be great, obviously keep it. But I love this idea I mean, journaling is a very important part of my life, and I really, empathize with Patricia's journey. Obviously, having been there myself and losing a partner, with in a time of my life where had young kids. In fact, she had 3 kids. Very interesting mirrors actually and lost her husband to cancer. I lost my wife to cancer. So I think it's. I found that I was really drawn to those ways of being creative, which allowed me to kind of express things that I was going through in not necessarily a kind of a direct way. And Patricia mentioned that she started to draw, and I started to draw for the first time in my life. It was really weird. I just had this urge just to sketch things and draw things, and I found such comfort in that. Another thing was doing puzzles, giving you something to focus on,
right,
that gave you a sense of accomplishment, something you could control and you could create the edges around and then fill in, but gave you time to process and think. And that's what the beauty of journaling is. And I think every single writer, I think it should be a law in the writing world that every writer should journal, because it's a way of kind of releasing part of the expression that often gets stuck in us. If we hit a point where we're really stuck in our writing, journaling about, and that's why, again, I mean, we're always mentioning the Academy, and but it's because we baked all this into the Academy. We have a progress journal on the Academy, and every day or every week, writers come in and they write out how their week was. Was it a good week? Was it a difficult week? What are they struggling with? What are their breakthroughs? And being able to kind of just express it creates such a release. It comes from inside of you, and you get it out on the page. And as powerful as writing a story is, I think when we write our own story, through journaling what's happening in our life, that's 10 times as powerful and unlocks the door into all kinds of creative things we were not aware of in our own writing as well.
Yeah, I've been keeping a diary for about 14 years now, and it's probably the one thing that keeps me sane. And similar to the morning pages thing, since I started writing by hand every morning, I do generally start by writing something like, okay, so-and-so's got themselves into a fix. Now, what was the thing? And it's me thinking aloud, but putting it on the page.
Yeah,
and, the first, few lines are generally just me posing a question. And then I end up answering it. And I find it's really, really helpful. Really helpful.
That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. In fact, I always say to people, never write down what your problem is. Write down the questions that you have around the problem. Because it's much easier to answer a question than it is to try and define the problem and then analyze it. And it's like, just answer questions, write the questions, and then give the potential answers. And it's such a beautiful way of just cutting through everything and getting down to the nub of what it is that you're trying to experience. I know that in some worlds, like people at coding, and say a website breaks down, instead of like going in and trying to work out, they'll say, why is this happening? What could it be? Number one, and then they just start writing a list, and they very quickly find the conclusion as to what the problem is. So some really, really great stuff there. But as well, I just want to put it out there as well to people, who have experienced something that, like Patricia has gone through, experienced loss. I think writing, it doesn't matter who you've lost or what you've lost. It's all grief. You can all put it in a bucket, and it's a unique journey that you go through. But writing is one of your most incredible companions on that journey. And I really encourage people, if they're struggling right now and what all they're doing is thinking about writing a book or trying to write their struggles out through their characters in their book, that's brilliant. But go that one step further and actually journal about what you're experiencing. What are you going through right now, no matter how hard, and it could be anything. It might be financial difficulties right now for a lot of people. It might be worries about the future. I mean, who doesn't have concerns about, what's going on in the world and the bigger pictures, climate change, what the world our kids are bringing up in. There's all these different things that people are latching onto and worrying about. Don't let it stir in your head, because that just sends you mad. It really does. Like, write out how you're feeling. And I promise you, even if you feel 5% better, that will help you through the day, and it will help you to make sense of what's going on. And I just want to encourage people, like there's a magic in it. And until you start doing it and doing it consistently as well, don't just, try and pick a moment in your day that you do it regularly. Do it with your coffee, do it when you wake up first thing, do it when you go to bed, but pick a time when you do it, because that's how consistency happens. Otherwise you kind of do it every now and again and you open your journal and you think, I haven't written in months. So yeah, just my 2 pence on on the world of journaling. It's a very, very important thing. I think we should do a whole episode about journaling, actually. I think it's such an important... We should ask writers, Mark, actually, when they come on the show, how they use their own private journaling within, what comes from it. I think we'll discover a lot of really fascinating stories.
Duly noted. Although we have a backlog of interviews running to October, so you're not going to hear anything about that until then.
Now, I think it's time, Mark, to dive into what's happening in the world of social media.
Yeah, you want some good news? You want some good news? You want some good wins? Excellent. Well, Adrian Chase, who is at _Adrian_Chase_, lots of underscores there. He got in touch on Twitter and he says, been listening to the Bestseller Experiment, now on episode 278. Come on, Adrian, catch up. And I've told Adrian that he has permission to skip forward to this week so we can listen to it. He says he loved Back to Reality. Thank you, Adrian. Bonus points there. But Adrian says, your podcast has given me the resolve to publish my novel, Wayward Arrows. There aren't any positive gay representation out here in Malaysia. So Adrian has written his LGBTQ novel, Wayward Arrows, published it in Malaysia, which, is a part of the world that might not be as open-minded as when it comes to gay folk as perhaps some other parts of the world. And in particular, this is Pride Month as well. So go check that out. Go support Adrian. This just made my day, because this podcast has all been about people whose voices who might not otherwise be heard, stepping up, telling their story, telling their, showing us how they see the world. And, we talked earlier about, we love a book with a juicy murder. Here's a book about love. What's greater than love? So Wayward Arrows, and thank you so much for that, Adrian, and good luck with that. We've got everything crossed for you.
Fantastic, Adrian.
Derek Miller got in touch, and this was on email. And Derek says, after a long year, I have a win. And Derek's part of the Bestseller Academy. But he says he's been busy. He's been working on a special project. Derek's mother is an author as well. And Derek works for a publishing company. And they have a movie coming out on the Hallmark channel. And it's called Mariah's Lighthouse, Love with a French Twist. Have you, because the Hallmark channel is an astonishing phenomenon. The amount of movies they put out, sort of TV movies, is just incredible. And they're always an event. So huge congratulations to Derek and his mum on that. That's just
absolutely
incredible.
Brilliant, Derek. I mean, it's fantastic. And I don't know if you know this, Mark, but I've been living in a Hallmark world for the last 5 years, because the place I live, the place I live in Vancouver Island, one of the flagship series on Hallmark, Chesapeake Shores, based in Boston, obviously east coast of US, being filmed in the west coast of Canada, is literally taken over our town. I a couple of things. You'd go down to the beach and walk along the beach walk, and suddenly you're in this marketplace and you're like, what's going on? And it's part of the show, and they're all off on lunch, and you're thinking, well, where's all the vendors? And the other night, I kid you not, I got woken up at midnight on a Tuesday night, and they did warn us in the press, but they were letting fireworks off down at the beach for the big finale of the season, season 6. And the whole of the town woke up going, what the bloody hell? Oh, it's a flipping filming. So it's just like, I'm living in a mini Hollywood. It's so random. It's absolutely random. It's like, and you get to see all of the town that we live in, like every week on Hallmark. But yeah, it's massive. It's an absolute phenomenon.
Brilliant.
There you go.
Cool. Finally, if there's something similar happen up the road here in Margate, which is not far from me. Sam Mendes has been filming his new film there, and they had a big fireworks thing and had to warn everyone and say they were going to. But the other thing they did is they put lighting all around the beachfront in Margate, sort of street lighting, like fairy lights almost. And the town council decided to keep them. They're like, we like that. That's really nice. It's a nice touch. We'll have that. Thank you very much. So
how interesting.
So, yeah. Yeah. But anyway, look,
Freebies
this
from the
isn't
film industry.
social media. Exactly, yeah. This isn't all about, making movies. If you're thinking, crikey, that's beyond my reach. Well, wins, we want to hear all your wins. Some of them are as simple as starting your website. So Kate Baker, who, again, member of the Academy and the BXP team on Facebook, she set up her own website. She said, I did a thing and have a new website. There's not much to see there yet, but, she's sharing her journey with us. And we always say it's so important to get that little flag in the internet, because Facebook, Twitter, these things come and go. But as long as you've got your own corner of the internet. So do check out katefrancisbaker.com if you want to find out more about Kate's writing and her journey to publication.
Brilliant.
And on Twitter, Dale Tedder got in touch. He said, I'm going to join this challenge. This is the 200 words a day challenge. So check out the hashtag 200 words a day. I'm going to join this challenge and see how many words a day I can work up. So welcome to the gang, Dale. And that's at Tedder Dale on Twitter there. We're with you every day there. Keep banking those words. And as you saw with Patricia, our guest today, that write every day thing makes all the difference. I do it, and lots of our listeners do as well. So congrats.
It does, yeah. And if you want to register for that, it's a free writing challenge, 200wordchallenge.com.
Fantastic stuff. And a really, really heartwarming piece of news. Now, one of our longest serving listeners and supporters of the podcast, Robin Sarti, she writes under the name Arlie Jacobs, and she put this is the post I know has been coming for many, many years. I knew it was just a matter of time. But Robin finally posted it, said, exciting news. My sister, cough, cough, me, cough, Arlie Jacobs, has signed a 6-book publishing deal with Conundrum Publishing. The first book will be out in August 2022 with 2 more soon after. As always, thank you. Well, she thanks us, but it's the whole... It's listeners, it's the BXP group, it's the Academy, for the belief that my stories were worth writing. They absolutely were. I knew it was just going to be a matter of time, and huge congrats to you, Robin.
Oh, that is just makes my day to hear that, because Robin has been one of the hardest working working people I know out there. And Robin, the first year of the Academy, she was there helping us out. She was a member of the Academy. She was such a great community member, and a big shout out. I mean, on this point as well, you talked earlier about going out and, finding your like-minded people. Like Robin has been completely central to so many of the things, the communities on this, and always willing to lend a hand and give advice. And so couldn't have happened to a nicer person. So congratulations, Robin, and you fully deserve every success you'll get from that. Brilliant stuff. Brilliant.
Wonderful
stuff. Mr. Stay, I just can't keep up. Is there more?
I've got more.
Oh my gosh.
I've got more. I've got 2 more. I told you it's a bumper round. Just a couple of things very quickly. One, we mentioned Jan Carr, again, member of the BXP group, long-time Patreon supporter. She had a launch party for her Wonder Girls books. And what's lovely is Andrew Chapman, who of course recently wrote a book in a day, and Rachel, they went along to Jan's launch. So we got people meeting in the real world and having book launches and all that sort of wonderful thing. So big congrats on your book launch there, Jan, and support from the BXP team. And most people, I don't know who knows this, but we have an unofficial bestseller experiment book group and authors group over on Facebook. And Steve Gowland, he recently interviewed Angela C. Nurse. So this is, 2 of our authors on the BXP group, people who, when the podcast first started, hadn't written a book. They're now writing books. They're getting reviews. They're interviewing each other. They're doing all sorts of exciting stuff. We've been going 5.5 years now, and it's just wonderful seeing people that have come on this journey and are now supporting each other and now doing these wonderful things and going off and doing their own thing. It's just amazing. It's just,
It's lovely, isn't it? It's a wonderful thing to see how you plant a seed, folks. You plant the seed and one day you might get a garden. And I think, think about that in your own writing career. What you're doing today is about planting that garden, and the harvests once they start coming, like so many things to celebrate today. And it's hard. The thing that excites me about all this, Mark, is we hear about all these incredible stories from people that actually write in and tell us, which is probably less than 1%, I reckon.
Tiny
of people.
percentage, yeah.
Tiny
Yeah,
percentages. So to everyone out there in the world where things are happening, number one, congratulations. Brilliant, brilliant. But number two, you've now got a duty. You now have to pay it forward by inspiring others. And that's what this podcast's all about. We want to hear about your successes because we want to be able to, for your successes, to inspire people who are kind of where you maybe were 2-3 years ago. Maybe you've been with us a long time on the podcast and, think back to those early days where you were struggling to, know what to do. It's time to pay it forward. So if you've had success, don't be shy. This is not the place. The bestseller experiment is not the place to be humble.
Don't be coy.
Don't be coy. It's about celebrating. This is life, folks. Like, let's not wait. Do you know what really I find really fascinating, Mark? Is that the one point that we usually celebrate someone's life is when they're no longer around. It's like, let's celebrate this. Everyone misses their best party, which is where people get up and say lovely things about them. They're not there. They're in a coffin or an urn, right? I mean, the point is that this is about life and we have to celebrate the wins as they happen. So folks, I'm sorry, I'm going to get really, 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 really stern about this now, Mr. Stay. It is time to celebrate your successes. We want to know about them. Tell us about everything that's happening because this is life, folks. It's happening right now. And if you don't learn to celebrate your milestones, you'll miss out on some of the best moments of your life. Honestly, they'll just whoosh by you like those deadlines. You've got to celebrate. So tell us. Write to us on the website. You go to the website, you click on the contact us form that comes to me and Mark, or you read every single email we get. Twitter channel, you can send us a message there. If you don't want to do publicly, send us a private message or a PM if you're cool. All that kind of stuff. Just get us your news and we'll celebrate it on the podcast. All right, rant over, Mark. Can't believe I have to rant about that, but you do. You have to kick people's butts sometimes. You do.
I love it when he gets angry, don't you, listeners? Right, if you want to drop us a line, as Mr. D said, there's a contact tab on the website, or come to Facebook, Bestseller Experiment, or Twitter and Instagram is @BestsellerXP. Slide into our DMs, drop us a line. If you've been inspired by Patricia and any of the authors that have been on this podcast, and you want to spread the word, tell your friends, but also subscribe, give us a rating, review us, say nice things, and then we can keep on doing this and, support some Patreon or come to the Academy. A big thank you as always to JD, our editor, who is amazing as always. Thank you, JD. So thanks for listening, folks.
Absolutely. And don't forget, folks, if you want to, we do mention this occasion, we have a book out called Back to Reality. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it or read it, it's there on Amazon and people are enjoying it. So do check it out. You
know what? There's a book in the New York Times bestsellers that's very, very similar premise to our book, and so I think timing wise we might have been a few years too early. Apparently the 90s are coming back now, so
we're not too early. We just prepared, Mark. We've got it there waiting waiting for the fashion to catch up with us. As I always said, one day it's going to go bonkers. And I also like to say to everyone that if you enjoy listening to Mark and I rant on about this stuff, but if you get inspired by this show, if you get inspired by what we talk about, then come and join us on the Bestseller Academy, because you will get this and in spades. I'm not kidding you. What we do on the Academy is bonkers. And not only that, but you get to meet all these other incredible writers, incredible community. It's a life passion for Mark and I now. So please come and join us. But we can only take on a limited number of people. So pop over to the website, get your name and application in, and we'll get back to you before the end of the month. So that's academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. Mr. Stay, I hope you have a fantastic week, sir. Enjoy the gorgeous weather that we all seem to be having now. Now
very nice
summer's
here.
Officially started. Yeah, it's very, very beautiful. And I'd just like to encourage everyone, keep going, keep being inspired, and thank you as well to Patricia Gibney for inspiring all of our listeners today. So it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a goodbye from Mark 2. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I don't know what that voice is. Goodbye. Rawr. Hello and welcome. Oh, bugger, it's you, isn't it?
Doesn't really matter. I'd have just rolled with it, mate. But should we do the clap again?